Whatever happened to the past? Why are we so obsessed with new stuff? Sure, advertising is just as effective as ever, but in a lot of cases, the last thing a photographer needs is a newest Sony or Canon mirrorless camera, but one of these, an original digital rebel.
The original Canon Digital Rebel is surprisingly fun to shoot on, which doesn't even initially make sense. It's slower than molasses, the autofocus is merely a suggestion, and it's made completely out of cheap plastic. But I think the limitations a camera like this sets on you completely changes how you take pictures, for the better.
This camera was special because it was the first DSLR to retail for under $1,000, even with a kit lens. This camera likely kickstarted the careers of many aspiring photographers as we transitioned into the digital age of photography. It wasn't without its faults though. To save costs, this camera was heavily derived from Canon's previous film cameras. The shutter was such one component. It failed often because of the exponentially more accuations it had to handle. Mine has the common sub-mirror failure. It means the second mirror used for autofocus doesn't flip up when taking photos, leaving them half black. The only solution is to tape the two mirrors together and shoot full manual. Since this camera has no live view, you have to use the viewfinder and light meter for everything. And since the camera takes so long to load the playback menu, you can't just stop and see what your photos look like quickly. And even so, the screen is so small and washed out, it's a futile venture anyways.
I remember watching a Camera Store TV video about this camera a while back, and I was left pretty confused. Because while the presenter says he likes shooting his Nikon F3 more than this thing, fundamentally they're very similar experiences, and I own a Nikon F301.
Although dual pixel autofocus, great high ISO performance, and fast storage help more of your shots turn out the way you want them to, sometimes you need to take a step back and consider exactly how to make a great shot in the first place. You'd initially assume that this camera would perform horribly in low light, and in some ways you'd be right. The autofocus straight up doesn't work, there's no IBIS, and the max ISO is 1600. But even all the way up in those high ISO ranges, it doesn't look that bad. This is paired with a 50mm Pentax lens you can buy for under $100.
However, it's about now that I should actually defend the thesis of this video, which is its title. This isn't a beginner's camera. And that might sound ridiculous because the Rebel series has always been associated with beginners or just the average consumer. But the truth is, this isn't what your average photographer should start out with today. They should pick up a newer Rebel or even a mirrorless camera since that's the way the industry is going. But the truth is, you can still learn all the fundamentals, like how to use a light meter and your manual controls, with a much nicer, newer camera. This is probably just going to piss the average person off. This is really for people who've become a little bit too dependent on technology and need to step back a little and consider what makes their photography so great in the first place. Because this camera still can produce really great images, but what I haven't shown is the hundreds and hundreds of out-of-focus pictures I took while shooting with this camera because the autofocus doesn't work and there is no focus assist. Additionally, having no live view makes it hard to judge your exact exposure correctly, and not being able to instantly preview your images makes it hard to see if you got the shot you wanted. Because your average beginner is not going to be concerned with trying to get the most technical photos possible. They're going to want something that's fast and reliable. but one of the other drawing features of this camera is its price. You can get a digital Rebel or any other similar early 2000s DSLR for under $100 with a lens easily. And it makes it really fun to experiment around with and makes it a camera that you don't necessarily have to care about. Kind of like the PowerShot SD600 I reviewed 3 years ago. Nonetheless, I think the result I was able to get with a camera this cheap and dinky was actually extremely surprising.
But with that, this has been the original Canon Digital Rebel, an entry-level DSLR from 2003. Thanks for watching.